Learn how to peel an onion.
Hey, it's Bob, Home Cook Basics. So today we're talking about how to peel an onion. It could be frustrating to get the skin off of these things. Onions are one of my favorite vegetables, and I use it in so much of my cooking. I mean, I'm pretty much using onions every day. So it can get frustrating trying to get the skin off and peel it off to get to that onion so you can chop it and slice it. So I'm going to show you how I like to peel an onion. This goes for red onion and yellow onion and sweet onion, but let's jump right into it.
All right, first step is to cut it in half. You want to go right through the long way, right through the stem and root end. The next step is to cut the stem ends off. Just cut both stem ends off, but leave the root end. You'll see why it's important to leave the root end later in the video. The last step is the peeling. Since we cut the ends off, it's really easy to grab the layer. If you can't get that fine film layer that's on the outside edge, you can rip off that layer and the next layer, and you'll get a nice clean part of the onion. I tend to do this if I can't get it off. Here you can see that I could get that real fine layer off, and the underside, that next first big part layer of the onion, was in great shape. So I was able to just grab it on the ends that we cut off, and it was really easy to pull it off to the root end of the onion. Now here's the trick for leaving the root end on. Now you can go ahead and slice, and that root end is going to keep it all intact. So now when I slide it around to start chopping, the whole onion's not going to fall apart. It's going to stay together. And this makes it nice and easy to chop. And that's why you only cut the stem end off. You can even save these little bits.
So that's it, how to peel an onion. I hope this helps you next time you try to peel this onion, and maybe it'll make it a little bit quicker for you when you're cooking. Thanks again.
Okay, I suppose it's the Trusty 8 podcast, The Onion of Truth. And you have no right to live. Neither do I. No one does. We'll talk about it a little bit, let the stream warm up. This one was due for April 2nd. Obviously, we're here and we're now. Many thanks, as always, to Godless Granny, Dara, Secular Pagan Mum, Titan Uranus, Tobin Templeman, all the guests on the channel. Godless Sewing was here last time. It was great. I'm trying some new stuff with my sound. So while this warms real quickly, I may just pop out of here and go check my sound on stream just to make sure that everything's running smoothly. Back in a moment. Alright, that looks good. And we'll proceed with this little ditty. I'll stay off camera while I share screen. Seems to work fairly well as it does work. I'm here at 8Co Studio in lovely Petaluma, California. Oh shoot, that's right. Okay, wait, give me 1 second because I need to pull this file up in order to share it. Recent. There it is. Okay. So if I tab, I have to try this a different way. Do that. Very good. And back to StreamYard. I know how to do this. I'm a professional. And I did say I had a presentation. Let's see, it's kind of hard to read. Yeah, well, however that works, you can kind of see it. Is this thing on? Okay. I built some sound baffling and stuff like that. I've got my blue mic back out. My headphones were dead, so I'm using an earbud. Hopefully that works out for us. It seemed alright when I checked the playback so far. If you hear a fan in the background, sorry, it's actually for noise cancellation. Because I have the other offices around me, so try not to step on each other's toes here, right? Alright, so we'll get to this slide you see in a moment. I'll take that out and read from my document. Stream seems suitably warm. Alright, so we're resuming from the morals versus ethics dilemma, dichotomy, which I presented in the last Onion of Truth video. It's good wine. And I have the day off, so kind of an unusual day. Probably do the review on my comedy set tomorrow. So I'll have a little bit of free time in the evening, I presume. And then after probably one more of these episodes on this particular topic, I'll go back to the beginning and begin to articulate my argument. It's all happening so fast, and yet so slowly. All right. So if we resume part 7, you'll be best, if you have not, to go and view the previous Onion of Truth video, Morals v. Ethics, to jump in at this particular point, because I'm at point 7, which will be later laid out somewhere in a timestamp or something in the description, I presume. Okay, And this is common morality or common moral judgment, those which are A, accepted by the majority, or the affluent members of a society as universally necessary, and thus adopted as standards of social order and decency, and passed as laws. This is point B. Passed as laws, which become the standard by which all actions are considered to be right or wrong. Prime examples are things like murder, rape, torture, kidnap, and theft. So the clearest example is murder, and we're going to use murder as we explain why you do not have a right to live. Very interesting paradox here. We'll explain further. Right, so point 8. Right or wrong action does not necessarily indicate moral or immoral behavior. This is due to the fact that objective and universal morality do not in fact exist. A third mechanism becomes involved. This is ethics and situational specificity. Showing back to the screen I had previously shared. I don't think I can get lots. I can get a little bit smaller, but not here. I think I'd just go God mode and nope, still the same thing, even without me there. Okay, so I'll just read this out for you. It's probably very small there. I thought there was a way to blow it up. Okay, so what is right? And we're going by some very standard definitions here. What is right? Morally good, justified, or acceptable. We've already entailed morality in the definition of right. But the subtext of this is being just, fair, equitable, and good. Right? Just, fair, equitable. I think we all have a pretty standard interpretation of what that means. It's the same for you as it is for me, right? This goes both ways. Number 2, that which is morally correct, just, or honorable. I think honorable has a different connotation to it, which is just kind of thrown in there. Different people have different interpretations of what is honorable, or as we'll go into here. 1, goodness. 2, rightness. 3, righteousness. Or 4, virtue. I think virtue and honor seem to have a similar connotation, which goes somehow beyond merely being good, because one can be good, but being honorable and virtuous is a feeling that you're appealing to some higher standard of morality. It's not just being good, it is being good to some exceptional extent. Okay, next, why? What is wrong? Wrong, by definition, is not correct, or true, or incorrect. 1, incorrect. 2, mistaken. 3, in error. 4, illegal. We also have unjust, dishonest, or immoral. I'm not sure, those kind of just got lumped in number 3 there, which is kind of strange. Against the law or unlawful. Now, this is appealing to what I had said above, and this is definitionally true. Anywhere you look, unlawful, illegal, or against the law, it seems to be synonymous here with wrongdoing, right? But being morally wrong and being unlawful are not the same thing. These things are divorced from one another. Only in some abstract common sense do we think of something being illegal as being wrong, right? But as we find all the time, there are laws which are in fact mistaken or in error quite frequently that we have to repeal and enact upon because our laws are actually wrong. So to say that something that's wrong is unlawful is it goes both ways, right? It's not equitable. And point 4, this is a secondary definition of wrong: an unsuitable or undesirable manner or direction, unjust, dishonest, or immoral action, which is again taken from above. I merely transcribed what I found in common dictionaries, including Merriam-Webster, I don't have a source for this one particularly. This was all, I believe, taken from Webster. I'll have to go account for that. 5, to act unjustly or dishonestly. And so I have point Z here. When is wrong action correct? Justified. Having done for or marked by a good or legitimate reason, right? So if you have done a wrong action for the right reason, you are justified, and therefore you're not wrong. Makes a bunch of sense. Makes a whole bunch of sense. And as we dig into philosophy, this is like one of the most important areas of philosophy is morality and ethics, why we do what we do, and why you think you have rights. Very important. Holy crap. I see godless sowing. Hello. I see Jill. My Bible? I don't have a Bible. I do Google things frequently. Yes, but I don't have one particular Bible. I like BibleGateway.com because they have multiple versions of the Bible. So when you're reading the Bible, it's fun. I think it's fun. Feeling beautiful today. So my argument follows as I proceed. There's actually no moral obligation not to, well, let me say, you do not have a right to live. What is a right? A right is something that is endowed. Here, we'll go back into the argument here because I don't want to get way off course here. Let's talk about the right to life. And this is quoted from crfusa.org. Locke wrote that all individuals are equal in the sense that they are born with certain inalienable natural rights. That is, rights that are God-given and can never be taken or even given away. Among these fundamental natural rights, Locke said, are life, liberty, and property. Well, Locke was clearly wrong. Because if Locke were correct, right, I mean, practically speaking, then people would never be deprived of any of these things. Make sense? Makes sense. To me, it does. So the prohibition against murder, I'm reading from my writing here, actually a secondary principle of what might be called natural or moral law. You see how I did that? Killing in of itself is not fundamentally wrong in philosophical terms. One might reasonably argue against undue harm or use of violence, but if one can reasonably justify ending the life of another in a humane fashion, then those arguments would be rendered moot. Furthermore, certain killing is still justified and even advocated for in instances of war crimes and certain criminal, egregious criminal offenses, right? I'm paraphrasing myself here because I realized I made an error there. So the right not to be murdered is in fact a second order of this fundamental characteristic, right? And what is the most universal law. So the idea that certain rights are natural or inalienable has a history dating back at least to the Stoics of the late antiquity and Age of Enlightenment, and into today. The existence of natural rights has been asserted on different premises such as a priori, philosophical reasoning, or religious principle. Kant claimed to derive natural rights through reason alone. The Declaration of Independence in the United States is based upon the self-evident truth that all men are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. Likewise, different philosophers and statesmen have designed different lists of what they believe to be natural rights. Almost all include the right to life and liberty as the two highest priorities. Hart argued that if there are any rights at all, there must be the right to liberty, for all the others would depend upon this. Green argued that if there are such things as rights at all, then there must be a right to life and liberty, or, to put it more properly, to free life. Right. This sounds like a load of philosophical garble to me. Free life? Free in what sense? In what sense do you feel free? Are there no restrictions? Are you completely liberated? Right. And a right is not a right if someone can take it away from you. Hence, you don't have the right to live, right? Because if you had the right to merely to live, then nobody could ever take that right away from you. So that's not what you have a right to. In the sense of me to you morality, sure, you have the right not to have me kill you, right? But if a bear kills you, did he violate your rights? Or did he merely exercise his own? A bear needs to eat, right? Murder is outlawed. We return to the this beautiful thing I've written here. Murder is outlawed in nearly every society in the world because nobody wants to get murked. Various criticisms of natural rights theory are the is-ought problem, naturalistic fallacy, or appeal to nature. Moore said that ethical naturalism falls prey to the naturalistic fallacy. Some defenders of natural rights theory, however, counter that the term natural in natural rights is contrasted with artificial rather than referring to nature. John Finnis contends that natural law and natural rights are defined from self-evident principles, not from speculative principles or from facts. So again, you can only speculate. Yes, well, it's certainly, especially in the time of the founding fathers, it was especially white male landowners. They did, in some sense, probably value the lives of their slaves, but only as some type of capital, which is, again, why autonomy is clearly so much more important than this mere free life, right? We can all be free and enslave other people. We're perfectly free to do that, and the Bible can condone it. But if we accept that each individual has the right to autonomy, all of a sudden you're left with this whole other bag of goods. And it's a much more nuanced conversation to have. Okay, return to text. Oh, and I keep getting sidebar back to that page for some reason. I think I accidentally inserted one of those things. There is also debate as to whether all rights are either natural or legal. I don't think something can be both natural and legal at the same time. That would be probably in some kind of conflict I can't think of right now. James Madison, 4th President of the United States, believed that there are rights such as trial by jury that are social rights. And this is a good point. Social rights arising neither from natural law nor from positive law, but from the social contract from which government derives its authority. Holy shit, what a concept. What a concept. I love that. See, that's getting right to the heart of the matter. The social contract from which government derives its authority. What does that mean? What are we talking about? Are we talking about the consent of the governed? No way. No way. We'll get there. We're still on why we don't have a right to live, right? And it ties into so many things. It ties into abortion. It ties into the way we now treat accidental deaths. where we probably used to be, in many cases, a lot stricter on accidental killings than we are now, and why the death penalty has been ousted, because we know in most places it's simply unjust to take a life, or it's unjust to take a life for the taking of a life, right? Two wrongs never make right. All right, so point 9, we've arrived, and it's not very long. We've got a little bit more to go. In the U.S., there are 3 tiers of murder. 3 tiers, not 2. Broadly, 3 tiers of murder broadly, a number of lesser charges on a spectrum of consideration for their severity, intentionality, and the circumstances surrounding the commission of an act. And there is also consideration in most cases for an altered or diminished mental capacity, such as plea of insanity or the Twinkie defense. I'm not justifying the Twinkie defense, I'm just citing examples. When prosecuting, that happened again. Okay, I need to stop hitting that key, it's killing me. When prosecuting a homicide, there are 2 key factors one must consider. Did the perpetrator intend to and plan in advance to take a victim's life? This is relating to the nature of the crime itself, apart from the burden of proof of commission of the crime in the court system, just to be clear, right? So you have to consider that person's state of mind. Because in many circumstances, this will push the jury towards an affirmative verdict, right? If this can be reasonably demonstrated, you've already established that they are guilty. But why did they do it? Because this is all the difference between somebody getting a more lenient sentence or a much stiffer sentence. Stiffer sentence. Many words being compiled here. A much stiffer sentence at the end of the day, because we're going to consider these factors. Did they sit there and they plot this out, right? First degree murder is any intentional murder that is willful and premeditated with malice aforethought. Right, so you intended to do it, you thought about it beforehand, you planned it out, and you went and did it. Second degree murder and intentional murder with malice aforethought that is not premeditated, right? So you didn't plan it out, but you kind of went, I'm going to kill this motherfucker, and then you just did it, right? So was it intentional and was it premeditated? Well, these are going to be important factors when you're judging the guilt of a person in what they've done. And then we have these categories of killing committed as a result of recklessness and negligence, voluntary manslaughter, involuntary manslaughter. So voluntary manslaughter is sometimes called a crime of passion, an intentional killing but involves no prior intent to kill, circumstances which would cause a reasonable person to become emotionally or mentally disturbed, right? Sometimes it could be a cheating spouse or finding out that somebody was playing a trick on you. I don't know. You could think of all kinds of examples in which you really want to kill this fucking person at this point in time, and you're not entirely unreasonable. But reasonable people don't do it, just to be clear. An involuntary manslaughter, a killing that stems from a lack of intention to cause death, but involving intentional or negligent acts leading to death, like drunk driving. And gross negligence is also included in this. There's a lot. I didn't want to read the whole thing out to you here, but it is not intentional. You could even be charged with this in a vehicular manslaughter case. That's another tier of this involuntary or vehicular manslaughter, right? Like where you might run somebody over, not mean to, right? but still kill them nonetheless, and there must be some justice served. So essentially you have the voluntary and involuntary as well as negligent forms of homicide, but they're all essentially accidental or reckless, right? They're not intentional. So intention makes all the difference when you're talking about taking the life of another person. And that's very important when you talk about autonomy. It's not just the right to life, right? And this ties right back to things like abortion. Abortion's a big hot button issue, and it's if you say that unborn potential person just merely has the right to life, then it overrides the autonomy of the vessel, the person that is actually conceived and carrying that other person, right? And so there has to be some precedent, and I think it's, the only precedent you can have is, well, I already exist, so fuck you, potential human baby. And you can never really judge somebody's intentions in that state. It's so difficult to try to really judge all the factors that are going to be rolling through somebody's head in that state of mind. Bringing another life into the world is probably the second, or maybe even more difficult decision. I don't know. Those two have to be like right up here. Is bringing a life into the world and taking a life out of the world have to be those top two. Like, if you have any brains and any moral virtue, these are going to be your ultimate considerations. There's none higher than that. I'm going to skip over this portion because it seems unnecessary at this point, but I think it's interesting that we don't hold parents, teachers, or bullies responsible when young people commit suicide and self-harm. And additionally, law enforcement agents, military, and many government agents and officials are exempt from liability in many negligent and wrongful death cases. It's just a fact. We've made it a point of law. The other notions aforementioned fall into the second category of ethics. Ethics determines how we are permitted to act under various mundane and extraordinary circumstances in regards to our moral judgments. Do not kill, unless, or maybe, and if it's absolutely necessary. There are very few moral judgments which do not admit of this flexibility. In ethical considerations of prior experience and present circumstance, this is precisely the realm of situational ethics. So, as we've discussed before, the legality or illegality of a thing does not definitionally make it right or wrong. And we understand that harm can be caused intentionally or unintentionally. Mistakes bear no moral value. Moral judgments pertain to right and wrong action, and it is impractical to think of mistakes in terms of moral reasoning. It is, however, practical to consider the potential ramifications of our actions if they should cause harm, whether intentional or unintentional. Right? And this goes into why there is an age of consent, why there's an age of responsibility, why minors are not held to the same standards as adults are. It wouldn't make sense. So the point in all of this is to demonstrate what is moral and ethical in any of this. Consider that all the various crimes I've just been describing all account for a single moral value or truth: do not kill. This is the most universal law. Morality in the broadest philosophical sense leaves only one morally justified exception to this law, which is self-defense or the preservation of life. But laws are not strictly passed or enforced according to moral judgment. Rather, they are established under the basis of actual and potential risk of harm, at least ideally. So in the case of that I presented before, whether or not you have two different individuals who have both been accosted, it is a matter of, and this is probably going to go into the next video, it is a matter of intentionality. You can accost a person unintentionally, right? You are not morally wrong, but you are socially wrong. And these are things that have to be corrected for in an ethical framework, where we are evaluating situations and not judging the whole person based on their reaction to a particular situation, right? And this is idealism, for sure. For sure, it's an idealism, but it's something worth fighting for. There's nothing wrong with personal preference, but personal preference has a stringent limitation. It is unique to each individual, and therefore can never be universal. So the question of what is objectively moral and what is merely a matter of subjective preference is yet another facet of ethical consideration. Moreover, our moral sensibilities are further reducible to being subjective amongst and particular to human beings, right? So nature does not adhere to our morality, and there is nothing as I said earlier, immoral about a person being eaten by a bear. Thank you, Sam Harris. It's great. But that is nature. Nature is amoral. So morality is neither natural nor universal. What is it then? Well, it's philosophical, of course. So yeah, I think that's the end of this one. I have one more of these, as I say before. What is up, Dig on America? Much love. That's the end of this particular episode. I have one more of these before I come back to my essay proper. This is gonna fall somewhere in the middle of that. The whole thing's being restructured. It's amazing. I love writing. I love being a writer. It's great. I know, right? And I feel like, and it may be just me, but I think everybody else is objectively wrong. Yes, affectionately yours, as always, Trusty 8 Podcast. Thank again, Dig on America, My Atkinson, Godless Sewing, and Jill. Jill was up there talking about Google. Yeah. I don't know what that's all about. Biblically, I'm gonna get the fuck out of here, and much love, everybody. Hey, can I do it? Peace, respect to everyone, and be true to yourselves, be kind to others, stay fucking trusty, and we'll be back soon. I'll probably do something tomorrow, Sunday. I'll be on Betty Buddha's stream, so check that out. I got a secret invite somehow. I don't know. We'll be talking about gender pronouns. Love you. See you later.